How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Well, good evening, folks, and welcome yet again to the Dr. Joe Show, exploring who we are and why we do what we do, based on the idea that no one is broken. We are all at a current maximum potential. We call that your I am. This is who I am. This is me, and I matter. But as you guys remember, we are influenced by and responding to those four domains: your home domain, your social domain, the biological domain, and the I see. How do I see myself? How do I think other people see me? Human beings are very interested in what other people think or feel. We call it empathy, but we really want to know, what are you thinking about me? So the I am, it's saying, look, you don't have to like your I am, even if it's the best you can do. It'll change. You don't have to condone it. Not a free ride. And you're going to be held responsible. It doesn't even mean you're going to win and be successful. But instead of judging yourself and other people as less than and broken, not doing as well as they can, should be doing better, less valuable, let's look again at why we do what we do based on the influence of the four domains. And think about those words for a moment. Look again, reverse them. Again, look. Again, to repeat something, look like a spectator. The I am is saying, let's respect who we are and why we do what we do without judging. When's the last time you got angry at someone treating you with respect? We live in a world right now where there is so much judgment. There is so much disrespect, and we shouldn't be surprised that there's so much anger and stress as a result of it. But in everything, there's an I am. And one of the things that is really remarkable about us as humans, as being a social animal, is that we have actually taken in other social animals. I know I have a dog, Bella, who, as you guys know, fills me with joy and love and oxytocin, not OxyContin, but oxytocin, that neurohormone of trust. And tonight, we get a chance to talk with someone who knows about dogs, who knows about writing, who I will admit, and I'll be honest, is an old friend of mine. Not old, but old, because we went to high school together. How cool is that? So let me just say, Morgan Baker is the author of the award-winning memoir, Emptying the Nest, Getting Better at Goodbyes. And in addition, her writing can be found in a multitude of publications. She teaches at Emerson College and privately. She lives in Cambridge in a multi-generational house with her husband, her daughter, her son-in-law, her granddaughter, and 4 dogs. Only 4 dogs. I say only 4 dogs, but you'll understand why in a moment. Morgan Baker, welcome to the Dr. Joe Show.
Well, thank you, Joe, for having me. It's great to see you after so many years. I really appreciate you inviting me on to the show.
I am delighted. And yes, it has been long years. Do you feel comfortable sharing that with our audience?
Sure.
Go ahead. When did we graduate?
We graduated in 1976. It was a very interesting time. Not similar to the time now, but also challenging. Yeah. And that was a challenging time.
It was indeed. And we went to an incredible high school. And it's amazing, half a century later. So we're about to celebrate our 50th anniversary, and Morgan has been really taking the lead in that and getting all the folks together. So I cannot wait to find out what's going on with you. We've had a couple of other Donnie Nichols folks on the show. We'll have another couple coming up. And it's just so much fun to reconnect with everyone. It's like yesterday.
Yeah, I found that reconnecting with people from high school, I feel more me than at other times in my life. The people who knew me in high school knew the real me. And then when I reconnect with them, I'm like, oh yeah, here I am.
So what do you mean? What's changed? What's not the real you?
I think I don't have to try so hard with those people. Mm-hmm. I think there is some real me. I mean, I've been with my husband for a long time, so he sees the real me, and my kids see the real me. But, I don't feel like I have to try to prove myself with my old friends. that saw me
Yeah,
both in like good times and not so good times.
it was wild back then. Oh yeah. So, that movie Avatar, one of my favorite line is I see you. That's how they say hello, I see you. So I see you, Morgan Baker, my old school chum. So let's talk. So okay, we've got a little bit of time. What you been doing in the last half century?
I'm not quite sure where to start. Um,
Well, when you graduated, Brown and Nichols, did you take time off when you went right to college? Right?
so I went right to college. I went to Vassar with 9 other people from our high school, and lived in a dorm with 4 of them or 5 of them. And truth be told, I only lasted a semester. I had a pretty serious mental health crisis. And in those days, there wasn't as much knowledge about mental health as there is today. And I will credit my mother and my stepfather that they let me take a semester off. I think they knew that it was kind of imperative that I do that. So I took a semester and I came back to Cambridge and I worked. I don't know if you remember One Potato, Two Potato. It
Sure.
was a restaurant in Harvard Square,
Yeah.
and I was the hostess. And I saw a psychiatrist a couple times a week, and then I went back. Sophomore year, I went back, and I decided that I would go through and graduate on time. So I overloaded with courses, and graduated on time. And I ended up being a psychology major,
Hmm.
with a lot. I wanted to double major in psychology and English, and they wouldn't let me for whatever reason. And so I just was a psychology major and basically took whatever English course I wanted to. And then I graduated, and and I from there, I did what would call a brief stint in New York City that lasted for about 6 weeks. My dad lives, he doesn't, my dad lived in New York for most of his life. And so I lived with him and his current wife. And I worked in not a restaurant, I worked in a hotel, in the kitchen of the hotel, peeling potatoes and it was not.
Okay, okay. No, but there's a theme here, Morgan. I mean, one potato, two potato.
Oh, right.
Three
Very good.
potato. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
No, that's
I
good.
guess your kids would be tater tots. So,
Right.
right. Go on.
Um,
So what? So you work in the restaurant peeling potatoes.
and so then I moved back to Boston. I lived in Boston, and I did a stint at an ad agency for a couple of years. And then I realized that I really wanted to be a writer, and that was what I've done my whole life, but not. Um, so when I was in college, for instance, I would look at the requirements for a course. And if it was like a final paper, I would take the class. If it was an exam, I was like, yeah, no, thank you. Um, I loved research. I loved writing. And so I went to graduate school at Emerson and got a degree in writing. And then I freelanced for years in a lot of papers around Boston, magazines. I did a lot for the Boston Parents paper, which was really fun because I sort of could combine my psychology interest with my writing interest. Um, and I started teaching at Emerson, which I never in a million years would have thought I would end up doing. I was always the person in the back of the room in a classroom, did not like to raise my hand, did not like to answer questions, was very fearful of being wrong, of asking stupid questions. And when I was in graduate school, they said, do you want, and this was a long time ago, so it's very different now, but they were like, do you want to try teaching? And I was like, okay, well, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I did it. And I tell this story all the time, but I taught the first class, a class that I was not prepared for. And at the end of the class, at the end of the semester, a student came up to me and said, "You got better." Um, I was like, "Okay, thank you." Um, so I fell in love with teaching. I just, and I've been doing it for 40 years. I just love it. I love love college students. I love their energy. I understand, probably because of my own mental health challenges. I understand their challenges, and I like being able to help them be supportive. And in all of that, then I got married, and I married somebody from Vassar who I had known, but we weren't together. And he's also from Cambridge. So he ended up living, we ended up living like 4 blocks from each other in Cambridge. And there was a lot of overlap, and we figured out that we had been at some of the same high school parties. So married him. He lived in Pittsburgh, so I moved to Pittsburgh, and then he got a job at the Boston Globe, so we moved back. And basically I'm in the same, we did move to Hawaii for a year, but basically I'm in the same house that we brought our children home to when they were born. So I've been in this house for 35 years.
It's a wonderful journey, but there's that theme, the fearful of being wrong. You still have that? Like,
Oh, that's a good question. I think I do, but I think I can check myself. So that I think I do feel I am I am fearful of being wrong, and I'm fearful of not fitting in.
mm. So is that why it's so much easier just to hang out with your old high school pals?
Yeah.
Because we went through a lot. There was a lot of stress in the world at that point, and we were all expected to go to college. We went to a pretty high-end private school, and the expectation was that we would go. Yeah, so um, it's it's not a small feat to have to deal with that pressure. We have a little bit of pressure here with the Dr. Joe Show. It's not much, but it happens like almost every 13 or 14 minutes or so. And the real pressure is that we have to be able to take a break so our sponsors can tell us about the pressure that they're under and how we can help relieve their stress, even as they relieve ours. So with that in mind, we will take our first commercial break. And we'll be right back with Morgan Baker, our guest on the Dr. Joe Show. We'll take a break. Be right back, folks. And we're back with the Dr. Joe Show, here chatting with my guest and honestly lifelong friend. Even though we haven't spoken in a while, I still feel as connected as ever to Morgan Baker, because we went to high school together at a time where, there was a lot of stress in the world, but there was also that friendship. And one of the things that, that I like to say is every friend was once a stranger. You
Oh,
think about that, right? Every friend was once a stranger, which means that, there are potentially billions of friends in the world. And we got a chance to really experience friendship there at Brown and Nichols. And I want to get right to the book that you've written, Morgan, Emptying the Nest, Getting Better at Goodbyes. And you wrote that, it got published in 2023, is what it looks like, right? But it's really a book about your growing up, your life, your ability to begin separating from people. Is that fair to say?
yeah. I think a lot goes back to my childhood and um, divorce. And divorce in the 60s was very different than divorce now. And so I think a lot of my insecurities and my attachment issues stemmed from that. But I when I was, I did get married, and my first child was born, and I realized almost immediately that she was separating from me.
Mm.
Um, and
Literally. I mean, she had been inside you
right,
and now is outside. I mean, just structurally.
right. And from that on, and how do you navigate um keeping somebody close to you, but also letting them become who they're supposed to be? And I think I did okay. And then My older daughter, I don't know how much of the book so my older daughter left for college and also went to Vassar. And she and my younger daughter, but she in particular they all have food allergies. And so I was sending her off, and I had been able to really control her environment, most of her life, and kept her safe. And all of a sudden she was going off, and I was like, oh my God, how is she going to stay safe?
And I know at one point in the book, you even said, hey, it's good. This place is okay because it's really close to a hospital, right? Right? Yeah. So you were a little anxious about that.
Yeah, no, very. Yeah. And so I made sure that they were really good. They were very good about it. When they were sending stuff out to the freshman class, they were saying, who wants to do what? And they said, is there anyone willing to share a room with somebody and not have any nut products in the room? One person raised their hand, and she is still part of our family. She was an amazing young woman, and she now lives in Seattle, but she was from Africa. She was in Cambridge at Harvard doing a PhD program, and she's just a great person. And people who stand up for you and are willing to do something that's maybe not what everybody else would do, they deserve a lot of I don't know, respect, I guess, and appreciation. So both of my kids went to college, and that was a hard time for me because I had to let go, and it took a while to figure out. And we also, like you had said about the dogs, we had a litter of puppies, which was our sort of big adventure before everybody sort of split up. And that was really fun. But then I didn't anticipate how sad I would be saying goodbye to the puppies. We kept one, and the rest of them we found, great homes for all of them. It was a great, great, great adventure. But it was sad, and it was, sending Maggie off right on top of the puppies just was too much for me to deal with. So I sort of fell apart. But then it took a while, but I realized life just keeps changing, and you have to change with it. And I ended up really enjoying being alone with my husband. We did fun things together. I had dinner with some old friends the other night, and I turned to the wife and I said, my 60s have been so great. And she said, yeah, me too. And it's that, and my husband and I moved to Hawaii for a year, which I never in 100 million years would have thought I would have done. And now I have this crazy house with too many dogs and 3 generations of family living in it.
That's so incredible. So a couple of things. I mean, the idea that things always change. I still write songs. One of the lines in the song is, change has come to pass. That's the only thing that lasts. Take a look. You got the choice. So you better take the chance. And don't be sad. Right? I mean, because it's true. It's always changing from second to second. And yet we get to hold on to and retain certain things. So the other thing that you said was, holding on and letting go. When my eldest first went to college, she went to Northeastern, Sophie. And I remember being in that group the first day of college, and the kids go one way and the parents go the other. And these counselors got up to talk with the parents about being able to hold on and let go, and how that would be difficult. And some parents, talked about that. And I tried to raise my hand. My wife kept pulling my hand down, but eventually I was able to escape. And I got my hand up and I said, I know my daughter at this point, right? If she's not ready to go to college, we haven't done our job, right? But she's ready. So I am okay. I'm okay with letting go, because I know that we're close. I'm okay with letting go. I said, but I had no idea I'd been holding on to such a large second mortgage to pay for this college. You know, but 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 there is that sense, isn't there? You know, you talk about it, the attachment we get when that first moment when you see your child, and then I mean, I'm really, really not just stunned, but impressed that you had that moment where you thought, God, from now on, we're going to be growing apart, and yet growing together,
Right.
growing apart. Well, and you think that that was connected to having gone through a divorce as a young kid?
I do. I mean, I don't know exactly how to connect it all, but I think I, without wanting to like get too cuckoo about it, I think it was I struggled a lot. It was not an easy time. My mother moved. I lived in New York City,
Yeah,
and my parents got us. I'm actually writing about this now.
good.
My parents sat us down after Christmas when I was in fourth grade, and and my brother and I were sitting at the dining room table, and they were like, "You and your mother are going to move to London," and I was like, "What?"
Yeah,
Uh,
you say, that's in the beginning of the book. You say that. The
right.
surprise.
So, um,
A
and then my mother moved us to Cambridge. Um, and it was just, I mean, and it was a time when there wasn't a lot of support for mothers with children from divorce. I think she really struggled. I mean, I know she struggled. And it was not a good divorce. It was very it was fraught with a lot of anger. Um
you know,
and that I think put me in particular, but my brother too, and a little bit my sister. My sister was so much younger than we were. She was a baby when my parents separated.
mm,
And but I felt pulled. It was like, where do I belong? Um I would go back to New York once a month to visit my father, and I felt like, oh, well, what I think maybe I wrote about it in the book. I can't remember what I wrote then and what I'm writing now. But when I moved to Cambridge, I was convinced that this was not a city. This was like New York was a city. Cambridge, no. There was grass, there was trees, there were parks.
right.
Cambridge was not a city. And for a long time I would tell people that I was from New York. And then and in high school, I got to the point where I had lived in Cambridge as long as I had lived in New York. And that was a real like turning point. Um, and now people who know me don't know. Some people obviously remember that I lived in New York as a kid and that my father lived in New York, but a lot of people don't. They're just like, "Oh, you lived in Cambridge your whole life." And I'm like, "Yeah, basically, but not really."
No,
So,
so your parents had already gone through that divorce by the time you were in high school. Uh,
oh yeah.
yeah, my parents were going through that when I was in high school. My mother used to say she was a divorcee, but always wanted to be a widow. That was that was that was her line. So
I
I can relate.
Yeah, I can understand why she would say that too.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you think
that,
that, I mean, I don't want it to get so shrinky, but does that connect also with the stress you're experiencing then in college and wanted to go back
oh,
home?
so the college thing was, I don't think I was ready to go to college for a lot of reasons. But again, in those days, there weren't as many people taking gap years. I should have taken a gap year. Um, but what really sort of was the straw that broke the old camel's back was that my mother and my stepfather had a baby.
Oh,
Um, and she was pregnant at our graduation. Um, and which was a little disconcerting for me.
yeah.
And the baby was born in October. He actually is in my house right now downstairs. And he's not a baby anymore. But so I really was not a fan of this idea of this baby. And the timing was Morgan goes to college and we have a baby and we're starting a new family as the brat has left the house. So it was hard. It's interesting. I reconnected with an old friend of mine from Vassar from freshman year. When I went back sophomore year, I sort of remade myself and made new friends. But I reconnected to this woman at a reunion last year, and she was like, "You were so unhappy," and I was like, "What do you remember?" Because I sort of like have blocked a lot of it out, and she was like, "You just were so unhappy," and it was really interesting to hear it from somebody who had been sort of part of it. But I now will say that my brother, who is 18 years younger than me, I'm really, really close to him. He's he's great.
Timing really is everything, and getting reconnected is critical, which is why we have this timing thing where we reconnect with our sponsors like every 13 minutes or so. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna reconnect with them, and then we'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show and talk with Morgan Baker and continue to hear the story. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. We are back to the Dr. Joe Show, the second half of the show now already. It goes by fast, but here we are with Morgan Baker, who has authored a book that really is a memoir, Emptying the Nest, Getting Better at Goodbyes. And we've been talking a lot about, what it's like to go through divorce, what it's like to have siblings who are significantly younger than you, but also what it's like to raise one's family. And then realize that they're all going to grow up. I've got 4 kids and they've all grown up, but there is something about this empty nest. It doesn't feel quite so empty. I love really just hanging out at home with Carol. So what about you, Morgan? You were alluding to that a little bit before, the empty nest.
Yeah, I think the empty nest, first of all, I don't think I think some people are really excited by the empty nest. And I would say that now, having been through it, that there is a lot to be said for the next phase or the next chapter of your life after your kids aren't home anymore. And I think I've always been really afraid of change. And that clearly is part of coming from the divorce. I have never liked change. And I also, both my husband and I came from divorced families where the divorce happened when we were very young. And we both went into the marriage saying, we are going to be better to our children. And we made a pact, basically. So we really, I think, gave a lot to the kids. They both had different kinds of challenges, but significant challenges that we had to deal with. And then when they left, we were sort of like, "Whoa, now what do we do?" But it was really, going to Hawaii with him was really fun. We developed we ate fried egg sandwiches for dinner. We didn't have to make big dinners anymore. We ended up watching, TV together. Little things. It's not like we went on big trips or it was just nice to sit together and laugh. And we always had dogs. So the dogs were always on our laps or whatever. And it was really nice. And then change. My daughter and her husband, they lived in LA for 10 years, and she lost her job in the entertainment industry. And they had a lot of issues. They'd had a lot of loss around pregnancies, and then they got pregnant and it stuck, but they didn't have an income that could hold them in LA. So my daughter called us up one day and said, "What do you think about if we move home and live with you?" And we were like, "Okay." So now,
but was it just an okay, or was there a elation or a trepidation?
well, my husband was like, "Oh yes, of course, come. I mean,
Okay.
he's just like over the moon.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit, I would have done anything for my kids. And my younger daughter lived with us during the pandemic. So I, you know, but I was a little bit like, how is this going to work? And there was a little, I think the thing that about change that's really hard is that there's always loss involved in it. Um, and and so, I mean, I am thrilled that they're here. I mean, it's a crazy house that we live in. It's insane, but it's great. And I get to see my granddaughter every morning, every afternoon.
Wow.
You know, I wake up in the morning and I go downstairs and they bought this huge playpen because we have so many dogs. We have to keep her away from the dogs. And I get to say good morning to her, and she, you know, is in the playpen, looks up at me and gives me this big grin. And I'm
Wow.
like, there's nothing better. So I feel very blessed. You know, it doesn't come without, you know, there's like the amount of mess and stuff, but it's, you know, I get to be with it's really amazing. All my friends said, you're going to love being a grandmother. You're going to love being a grandmother. And I was sort of like, yeah, probably. But I also really love this, like being alone with my husband time. And is that going to, you know, rock that boat?
Yeah.
But it's really great. And my son-in-law said to my younger daughter, I don't know if he knows that I know this, but he said, you know, living with your parents really isn't that bad. So he's been part of the family. They've been together forever. So it wasn't hard having him move in.
So how did you get inspired to write the book after all this time?
I've always wanted, that's a really good question. I've always wanted to write a book.
Mhm.
And I've taught for 40 years, but I've always been an adjunct at different schools, mostly at Emerson, but also BU, Harvard, and Pitt. But I love Emerson students. And there was a time in my life that I would have killed to be a full-time faculty member, but I didn't have a book. And
That's something you need to be a full-time
well,
faculty member?
yeah, I mean,
You need to have a book?
I had a lot of publications,
Yeah.
you know, because I wrote magazine articles and essays, but I didn't have a book. And I also just am not as pushy. Pushy is the wrong word. I'm not.
Disciplined?
What?
Is it disciplined? I mean,
Yeah, no, it was just that I don't put myself out there. I
Yeah.
mean, now I do a little bit more than I did, but I couldn't, but part of the problem with the book was that I couldn't think of what I wanted to write about. And then we had these puppies and Maggie left, and all of a sudden I went, oh, that's the story. And it actually took a long time because Matt said, my husband, when we had the puppies, I kept a blog. And he was like, and he said, you can write a book about the puppies. And I was like, okay, that's a good idea. And so I wrote the first 900 versions of the book.
Is that a blog site or a dog site? If you
Blog.
No.
Oh, you were just making a joke.
Yeah, sorry.
I got it.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book, and it was mostly about the dogs, with a little bit of Maggie. And then I tried to sell it and I couldn't, and I got a lot of it just, and I knew somebody then sort of made an offer, and I was like, it didn't feel right. And so I just said, forget it. This is just a learning experience. I'll figure out something else. And I put it aside for like 3 years. And then I brought it out again and something clicked. And I was like, oh my God, this is about Maggie. This isn't, or it's about the this isn't about the dogs. I mean, the dogs are integral to it, and so, it just, and I find that that's true with any kind of writing is that, you know, I mean, a book takes a lot longer, but you know, I was writing an essay today and it was like, I thought it was about one thing. And then I realized, oh, it's actually about something completely different. Which is also what makes writing fun, is you don't know what you're going to write until you start writing.
Yeah. So do you have a process, right? Or do you just sit and get inspired?
I do not get inspired. That is just I sit. I come up with ideas sometimes. I'm working on something now, which is a bunch of essays that I'm trying to string together about home, about finding home and finding me. Um, and so, but all of those sort of started as individual things, and now I'm trying to weave a thread between them. Um, and I am very disciplined. I am disciplined in a way that I couldn't be when my kids were little. Um, and and when my kids were little, I also was like, oh, somebody gave me an assignment and I can make some money from this, so I'm gonna, do that. So I didn't work on like my own stuff. Um, and so I sit down, I write every day.
Hmm.
I belong to and the pandemic, I used to not have a big writing community, and then the pandemic like opened up this thing called Zoom, and I have my husband's like, which Zoom group were you working with today, Morgan? Wait, is that the one from Toronto or is that the one that's across,
Is that
and
great?
he can't keep track of all the names, which I don't blame him. I mean, there are a lot of names. And I went to a conference in Baltimore in March and saw a lot of the people that I see on Zoom, but in person. And it was wild because it didn't matter. We were friends.
Yeah.
Zoom, it doesn't matter that I can't shake your hand,
Right.
you know. So that community has really supported me. And I just write. I I write a lot.
So how do people get the book? How do they find the book?
They can get the book on lovely Amazon.
Yeah.
They can also get the book on Bookshop.
Oh.
And they
How
can
do they
also
how do they get the bookshop? Is that www.bookshop or
yeah. And
yeah,
Bookshop
something like
is
that.
all about independent bookstores. So
Oh,
it
great.
takes a little
Great.
longer to get the book than it does if you go through Amazon, but it supports independent bookstores and
Right.
you
Right.
know, um
And you have
you
a
can also
website as well?
I have a website which is by morganbaker.com, and you can order the book off of my website also.
Mm. Well, it's so important to be able to keep writing and publishing. So you're working on another book now? Started the idea?
Yeah, I am. So it's sort of, I guess, it's not really a sequel, but in some ways it is. It takes a lot of it is about Martha's Vineyard, where my family has deep roots. Um, and it does go back to the divorce, that when my parents got divorced, I really was lost, and the vineyard and my grandmother were the anchors. Um, so a lot
Yeah.
of it is about that, and
It's so important to have anchors, right? That help us not float away, really. And that's why every 15 minutes or so, I'm proud to talk about my anchors so I don't float away and we keep the Dr. Joe show going thanks to our sponsors. So let's take a listen to our anchors and see what they have to offer to anchor all of us. We'll be right back. The Dr. Joe show, Morgan Baker. And we are back with the Dr. Joe show. We're talking with Morgan Baker, and off air, we're talking about her career, not just as a writer, but as a teacher of writing. So, Morgan, can you tell our audience a little bit about that process and what you're helping our folks with.
so I teach the two areas that I teach in are magazine writing, where students get to write feature stories about things that I tell them you have to write a profile, but I don't tell them who they have to write a profile. So maybe actually I might send one to do a profile on you sometime.
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much.
You'd be a great profile.
Oh boy.
Um, and and then I also teach creative nonfiction, and the students often come into that class not knowing what they're getting themselves into. They're required to take classes in different genres, and so they're like, okay, fine.
So what is creative nonfiction?
So it's basically personal essay, memoir type of work.
Okay.
And like the magazine class, I give them a broad topic and which they can do whatever they want with. So the first essay that I give them is about place. And so they
Hmm.
write about a place and a story about the place. And then we do a couple of other pieces, and then the last piece that they've just finished because the semester is ending tomorrow, they write the last piece is to write about family/identity, and they can choose identity or family or merge them.
Hmm.
And when the joy for me in teaching this is creating community. And I hope to create a community where the students feel safe, um, and they can share things that are tough. And some of it is I've learned how to deal with it. It's very important when I teach this that the critiques that the students share are about the writing and not the topic. And so they write, and this semester, and so I never know who I'm going to get. This semester, I happen to have a fair number of young people who had lost people that they love.
Yeah.
There were some fathers that were gone, a partner that was gone, a best friend who was gone. Um, and it was heartbreaking to see the pain that they were in, but also the way that they all supported each other and understood each other. And, um, it makes me, I don't know, it makes me feel good. And it also, I think, teaches people that, and I think I said this before, is that you don't know what you're going to write until you start writing. And um and the fun part for me as a writer and the fun part for me as a teacher is seeing that discovery. That you start saying, you know, uh, I'm going to write about this glass of water, and then it ends up being about swimming in the ocean. But you wouldn't know that until you actually start putting it on the page. Um,
So is that your process as well? Where I mean, you were talking about this before. You don't always know what you're going to write when you start, but in the previous writing, not the memoir writing, you had a topic. You had like an assignment, right on this. Was that a different part of your brain that was functioning, do you think?
yeah, so when I was doing mostly magazine work and writing profiles and feature stories and service pieces, I loved being given an assignment. I
Too.
hated coming up with an idea and then pitching it. I hated that. But I loved them saying, can you write it? Like I was talking to somebody the other day about the pieces that I've worked on. And when I think back on it, I'm like, I wrote a story about keeping kids safe in school after Columbine.
Wow. Wow.
And, and we all thought that was, a one-off.
One and
And
done. Yeah, look at
yeah,
it now. Yeah. Yeah.
so that, I think about that and I'm like, wow. I wrote a story about not nearly as significant, but about electric cars for the Boston Business Journal. And I was like, what is an electric car and who cares?
Right.
Um,
Look at us now.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you think to talk about that Columbine story, because the book that you've written, that holding on, letting go part, I think it's so much more difficult for parents these
Oh,
days to let go because there's so
they're
much
both.
danger out there.
Yeah, my daughter, who has the baby, said to me the other day, she said, "So how old do you think Laura has to be before I can let her walk to school by herself?" And I was like, Maggie, she's like 7 months old. You don't have to worry about this yet." But I was like, yeah, that is, you know, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. And um, yeah, there's a lot of really ugly, scary stuff out there.
And yet we have to prepare our kids, so that we can experience that empty nest. But one of the concerns I've had about, what used to be called the helicopter parent is in the absolutely appropriate desire to protect one's children, you may be sending them the message that they're not strong enough to protect themselves.
Totally.
And that's the
Yeah,
concern.
no, I agree with that 100%. And I think I saw some of that. I had a student, I mean, I can't remember when this was, and I don't think I can remember her name, but it was a while ago, like pre-pandemic by many years. And she was struggling, she had some issues, whatever, and her father called me. And I was like, "Excuse me? You know, this is not middle school, this is not high school, this is college. This is between me and the student, and not you do not belong in this conversation." Um,
Yeah.
and I think, and I also think, life has changed with cell phones. I was talking to a student of mine yesterday or the day before who did an independent project with me, and we were talking about traveling, and he had gone abroad for part of his junior year, and I was talking about when I graduated from college and I traveled with my college roommate. We did not have cell phones.
Right.
Nobody knew where we were. We didn't worry about, like, are we gonna be, you know, kidnapped or killed someplace?
Right.
There's a lot more out there, but I do think you can't lock them in their houses. You have to, and I think not only is it scary maybe for the children, it's scary for the parents to let go.
Yes, it
But,
is. And
um
and I think, that's a little different than part of the theme in the book. The theme of the book was not just the fear, but the sadness that one was potentially going to experience when one does have one children leave. With that in mind, the show is the Dr. Joe show is based on the I am approach. We spoke a bit about this, the idea that we're always doing the best we can. Everyone's at a current maximum potential, influenced by those four domains: the home, the social, biological, and the IC. Because those four domains interact, a small change in any domain can have a big effect. We don't need to change everything. But whenever I add a medication as a psychiatrist, I'm just making a small change in the biological domain. Nothing's broken. I'm changing the environment of the cells. I change the response. So, Morgan, based on what we're talking about tonight, what small change can you recommend to our audience?
A small change is to find something. If you're experiencing empty feelings, of children or whatever, a small change is to find something that you enjoy doing by yourself. I quilt,
Mm,
um, and it brings me an immense amount of joy. It's something that I do by myself. I don't have to rely on anybody else. It's just me and the fabric and the sewing machine. And, if you like to run, do that. If you like to cook, do that. Find something that really is yours.
mm. That's a wonderful small change, folks. So you may find something that brings you joy. It doesn't need to include everybody else. Is that part of, am I missing something here? Or
No, I mean, obviously being with other people is joyful, but I think when you find joy just being alone doing I mean, I I don't my family knows that I love to quilt. They've gotten very good at telling me which quilts are good and which quilts aren't so good.
it's
But
great.
none of them would wanna be in my room with me while I'm sewing,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't want them.
no, that's net what you want. So the second truth of the I am, everyone's got one, and everyone is interested through their IC domain what you think about them, which affects their biological domain because it feels different when you feel respected or disrespected. And because you're part of someone's home or social domain, the second truth of the I am, the powerful truth of the I am, you control no one, but you influence everyone. And you get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. Morgan Baker, author, mother, grandmother, dog owner, teacher. What kind of influence do you want to be?
I think I want to be I believe in respecting people, um, and I think I bring that. I don't know if this is answering your question exactly, but and I would like to joy, bring joy into, I can be pretty goofy. Um, I like being goofy. My family thinks I'm hysterical.
It's
So,
great.
yeah, humor, joy.
So that's the influence you want to be able to provide joy, bring joy to others, and teaching and education. So, folks, Emptying the Nest, Getting Better at Goodbyes. It's a wonderful book. I got a chance to read it, and it's got these themes that I think everyone can resonate with. I think it's got universal themes about attachment, the sadness of saying goodbye, and yet then, I mean, you said that there's always a loss with change, but there's always a gain as well. You gain something new. So I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight, Morgan, and I'll be seeing you at the reunion.
Yeah, this was fabulous. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really love talking about these things.
I so appreciate that. Guys, you can get the book Amazon. What was the other one?
Bookshop.
And on Morgan's website, which is
bymorganbaker.com.
So, and that's BY or
BY, like I write,
as opposed to by.
No, it's not BUY.
Morgan, thanks so much. Folks, enjoy the week. We'll see you next week on the Dr. Joe Show. Let's make it a good one.
Stretch the